Hello again, GLL back for another video. Recently I watched Weapon Grade's video, and yeah, it was a good video. He did a shout out to me, so anybody that subscribed, thank you very much. But basically, there was a part in the video where he kind of got off track a bit, and he just started talking about sprint. Now, the thing is, talking about sprint, you have to be pretty specific about what you say, because if you're not, you end up talking like Favyn, okay? And that's exactly what he did. He basically said exactly the same shit Favyn was saying in his video. It was basically word for word the same fucking shit that we've all heard time and time again. Now, I did a video about that video a good while back, and I made several points about how this wasn't the case, that clearly the game doesn't revolve around sprint, because 343 don't have a fucking clue what they're doing. You know, the game doesn't revolve around anything, it's just a load of shit thrown in at random. There's no, oh, the game revolves around sprint. In what fucking regard? Okay, that didn't make any sense then, and it doesn't make any sense now. There's no evidence to support that or anything. You take sprint out of Halo 5, you've still got fucking charging, ground pounding, etc. So what? How does ground pound have anything to do with sprint? It doesn't. How does ADS have anything to do with sprint? It doesn't. Okay. Thrusters, what do they have to do with sprint? You can still use thrusters without sprint. So again, it doesn't make any sense. All you can't do is fucking shoulder charge and basically get around the map as fast. Okay, but without sprint the game still works. It's nothing to do with sprint. Sprint is like one thing. You take sprint out and it's not like the whole game is fucked. That one component can easily be removed. So how does the game revolve around it? It doesn't. Whether you like it or not is irrelevant. Now, basically, if you want to stay friends with Favyn, don't mention sprint. Because the minute you mention sprint, his eyes turn red. Okay, he just sees red and that's it. Okay, obviously he's got bad memories of Halo Reach, people sprinting up behind him and whatnot. He just can't handle the fact that Reach is not fucking Halo 3. Okay, it's Reach. Okay, deal with it. You don't like Reach? Hey, that's on you. That's on you. You don't like something, you don't like sprint, that's on you. We're talking about facts. Okay? And we're talking about observations. Okay? So let's talk about this as if we're talking science. Let's talk about this not as if because I'm a Reach fan. We all know I like Reach. We all know Reach is probably one of my favourite fucking games. Maybe my favourite game on the 360. But that's irrelevant because we're talking about sprint. That's it. That's all we're talking about. And I will use evidence to support my argument that sprint does nothing. Okay, sprint does absolutely nothing. Does it change the gameplay? Maybe, but no more than anything else in the fucking game. Okay? Now, he left me a comment, I replied, and then he left me an essay. Okay? I haven't got time to fucking type that much, so I'm just going to put this on a video. Colton King, if you're not aware, is Favyn's other account that he uses when he just wants to fucking make comments and whatnot. So I don't know why he has two accounts, honestly. But anyway, Colton King, that is Favyn's other account. So this is going over on, this is from over on Weapon Grade's video. And so here we go. I'm going to reply in a video. Okay? Now, if anybody that's listening to this and thinking, okay, you disagree with me, that's fine, disagree with me, but you have to come at me with some really good evidence to prove me wrong. And I don't think anyone's got that evidence. So then it just comes down to opinion. So let's get into it. Okay, right off the bat he says, there's literally zero evidence that Sports D all Sprint does is give a burst of speed. What else does Sprint do? What else does Sprint do? That's exactly what it does. It gives you a burst of speed. That's all it does. You press LB or the stick and you run for X amount of seconds. It gives you a burst of speed. That's it. That's all it does. That's exactly what it does. So how is there zero evidence for that? Okay. You say my argument has so many holes I'll be typing all day to plug them up. How? How? Sprint makes you run slightly faster for X amount of seconds. Now if we want to talk about the perk in Halo 4, which nobody ever mentions, that gives you infinite sprint. If you want to talk about Halo 5 where infinite sprint is a constant, then we can talk about infinite sprint. But you're just talking about sprint in general. You can't generalize it because Sprint 1 in Halo Reach is an ability and isn't even tied to your character. Then in Halo 4 you've got perks, so you've got a situation where some people can infinite sprint, some people can't, which is never touched upon or even spoke about. In fact, when I did my research into sprint, I didn't even remember about that perk. That's how much I played Halo 4. And then we've got Halo 5 where you've got infinite sprint. Then on the sidelines we've got Halo Online over here that has a time sprint again. So Halo 5 has an infinite sprint, but Halo Online doesn't. Okay, so they've all got different sprints. You can't just lump them all together. Halo Reach is an ability. Halo 4 is mandatory, but you've got a perk that makes it more powerful. Halo 5 is mandatory, but everything's mandatory in Halo 5. And then you've got Halo Online with a time sprint again, going back to the Halo Reach, Halo 4 without the perk style. They're all different. But when you talk about sprint, you just talk about sprint. You don't differentiate what you're talking about. It's not all the same. It's not all the same. So here we've got Colton King over here, Mr. Favyn. In Reach, sprint was an ability in a loadout. That was Halo's first example of uneven starts. That itself broke the tenet of Halo. Just stop you right there. Weapons Grade recently did a video talking about the triangle. What's the triangle? Well, basically it's the concept of that the point of Halo, the gameplay that should never be broken, is weapons, grenades and melee. Sprint does nothing to affect any of these. Okay, so if you've got grenades, okay, you're not going to get away from a grenade in Halo Reach. You're not, because they're some of the most powerful grenades in the Halo series. Were they increased because of sprint? Well, how can you determine whether they were increased because of sprint? You see, this is all subjective. None of it can be fucking proven or anything. All we know is sprint does nothing. It doesn't affect anything. It doesn't affect the fact you can grenade people. It doesn't affect the fact that you can punch people. It still doesn't affect the fact you can shoot people. So it does nothing to affect the triangle. I was mentioning to fucking Weapons Grade over here, when they made Halo 2, afterwards when they did the documentary of the Halo 3, they mentioned that they'd fucked up in Halo 2. This is Bungie themselves, not me. Bungie themselves said that they fucked up with Halo 2 because they broke the triangle, because people weren't using melee and grenades because they were picking up dual wield weapons, and so the whole game essentially became, you know, about plasma pistol, noob combo with an SMG or with a pistol, or, you know, two dual weapons or whatever. And that wasn't the plan when they made the game. That wasn't what they were intending, but a lot of games did end like that. Now obviously you can say, well, everybody just went and picked the BR or whatever. Yeah, but this is from Bungie themselves. They said they fucked up because they broke the triangle. And then that's why they then brought the assault rifle back in Halo 3 because they wanted to make it so that you didn't constantly dual wield. So the only dual wield weapons in Halo 3 were like when you could pick two up off the floor, more or less, and mix them about and that, but they were off the floor. You didn't start with one dual wield weapon, apart from the pistol, but that was really pretty much irrelevant. That was sort of added halfway through the game for no apparent reason. So we had the assault rifle. That was like the starting weapon in Halo 3. That the reason for that is because they didn't want another situation like Halo 2 where SMG starts and then you pick something else up in your other hand and don't grenade and melee. That was the point of the assault rifle coming back in Halo 3. Then in Reach they dropped the dual wielding altogether because of that reason, because they don't think that it improved the gameplay. They personally think that it didn't improve the gameplay, which is why dual wielding never came back, because Bungie got rid of it in Reach, and you know, basically that was it. 343 never thought to bring it back, so it's been gone since then. That's just a fact. So what the hell does sprint do to affect anything when you've got Halo 2 over here? Well, probably, arguably, the best game in the series. Arguably. Personally, I think Reach is better. But arguably, Halo 2 was the best. Most people would say Halo 2 was the best. Hardcore, die-hard fans would say Halo 2 was the best. And for good reason, it was a good game. But Halo 2 had a fundamental flaw when you use an SMG start, which is why people always made the custom games BR starts and whatever, but that's not how the game was designed. So what is the point in saying sprint killed Halo? I don't get it. It didn't. It honestly didn't. There's a million other things. You just a sprint hater. You really are. You hate Halo Reach and you hate sprint. Anybody that defends sprint or Halo Reach, you're gonna hate on. It's a fact. We can go round in circles. You're not thinking logically. How the hell does sprint do anything to affect the gameplay? Really, when you actually think about it, it doesn't. And then this concept here, uneven starts, right? Okay, uneven starts. But we had equipment in Halo 3. We had power drainers. We had regenerators. We had bubble shields. These are all equipment. The only difference is you didn't start with them. All you had to do was walk maybe a few meters on the map. You only had to walk like a few yards on the map to pick one up. What's the difference between that and starting with it? I mean, you normally find your weapons and stuff before you start fighting anyway. So, again, just because they had uneven starts doesn't prove jack shit. Doesn't. Again. If uneven starts are the problem, why is Halo 5 so bad? It's not the uneven starts. It never was. When you've got shitty perks like you've got in Halo 4, yeah, you could argue about it's the perks, but it's not the uneven starts. It never was. It never was. The maps in Reach had to be designed for 6 abilities, not just sprint. You say jetpack broke Reach, why? Well, I never said Reach, the jetpack broke Reach. That was my point. My point is, nobody ever says the jetpack broke Reach. Nobody. Nobody ever says the jetpack broke Halo 4. Nobody ever says the thrusters broke Halo 5. What do they say? Sprint broke them. Sprint broke them. Why? Because they don't like sprints. It's got nothing to do with logic or reason. It's just, I don't like something, let's fucking diss it. It's got no fucking... There's no evidence to support the fact that sprint, everything revolves around it and then it broke everything. There's no evidence for that. It's all cooked up by yourself and other people in their own minds, and from what other people say, they take a little bit of that themselves and they put it into their fucking explanation for why things have gone downhill. Ready Up Live basically said that Halo started to change with Reach, and that it was all Bungie that started all these changes, so you shouldn't hate on 343. But that's total horseshit, as we all know. It's complete bollocks, because Reach was a decent game. End of story. Okay, so say Jetpack broke Reach. That's not what I said, but whatever. Because it disrupted map flow and control. No, that's what I'm saying. Jetpack, you could argue. Sprint, you can't. How the hell does sprint affect map flow? It doesn't. You're just moving slightly faster. That's all you are doing. Okay? A jetpack, you can go from a bottom floor of a building to the top. Okay? Without using stairs or a grav lift or whatever. Prime camping spots in Halo games. Prime camping spots. And you could sit there and be like, well, what's that got to do with it? Well, it's got to do with everything, because if you hold a particular area or whatever, you cannot no longer do that when you can be jetpacked from behind. What does sprint do? You've still got to use the same fucking walkways as you would when you were going slowly. It doesn't affect anything. It affects nothing. It's okay to say it's balanced because it's limited, just as little difference as saying it's okay because shields can't recharge. Once again, having a limited sprint gives you an ability that lasts so many seconds and then it's used, and you've got to wait for it to recharge, and you're a sitting duck while you're waiting for it to recharge. The point is it leaves you vulnerable at certain times. You've got to plan your actions with it to be any good with it. Now, look at Gears of War. The original Gears of War or Judgment. Those games are fast as fuck, right? And you've got infinite sprint. You play Gears of War 1 and you'll be chasing someone for ages. If it's a one-on-one and the guy decides to run, you know, you could go to a time limit easily, because you'll never catch him, because he doesn't have to stop. He never has to stop. So to say that having infinite sprint doesn't make a difference is a ridiculous statement. It's a flat out ridiculous statement. How can a sprint that lasts 10 seconds be the same as a sprint that can last forever? Forever. Of course it's a massive advantage to have infinite sprint. Of course it is. This idea that 10 seconds of sprint is the same as infinite sprint is something you've cooked up in your own mind. How can that be a thing? You tell me, how can that be a thing? It can't be. You're just biased. You are biased against sprints, so you'll negative anything, even if it's only 10 seconds versus infinite. Anybody can see that 10 seconds of sprints, whether you're on the pro sprint or the negative sprint, it doesn't matter. 10 seconds of sprint is not the same as infinite sprint. And you can try and tell me it is all you want. The fact is it never will be. That's a fact. It's completely different. Infinite sprint is infinite. And 10 seconds is 10 seconds. Done. Simple. It's different. Completely different. How does sprinting make escaping much easier? With an emphasis on the much part. Okay? Let's face it, you've got sprint, I've got sprint. I try and get away, you're going to run after me. How does that make any difference from a normal Halo game? A normal Halo game, you would do exactly the same thing, except I've got no sprint and you've got no sprint. We're both still the same fucking speed. The only problem is, when we're playing Halo Reach, you've got no sprint and I'm using sprints. Then I have an advantage, because now I can run away from you and you can't keep up, which is why when I played Halo Reach, all I used was sprint. All the time. All the time. That's all I used. So how am I going to get away from you if we're the same speed? Okay? Don't come at me with this try-hard bollocks where you say, oh, it's easier to get away and all this, because literally no. Literally no, because people run away in all manner of games and all manner of Halo games. People try and escape. They try and duck behind walls and whatnot. Okay? So how does sprinting really make that much of a fucking difference when we're all said and done? Yeah, maybe a slight bit of difference there, but if we're the same speed, we've all got the same fucking chance of catching up with somebody who tries to run, and people try to run in all Halo games, not just the ones with sprint. Let's have this clear. Let's have this clear. Creates multiple levels of movement. Again, what difference does it make when you only get a 10-second burst of speed? It doesn't. When you've got infinite sprint, then you've got an argument. How have you got an argument with 10 seconds of speed? It's a 10-second speed, and then you've got to wait for it to recharge. That's it. Okay, so creates multiple levels of movement. How does that affect the game? Really? It just doesn't. Combat exists at one movement speed while transversal exists at another. This makes pursuing opponents a different experience. It makes stopping and fighting less smart than just running away. By the time you bring your gun up to exit the sprint animation, your opponent will have a severe advantage. How? How? In what regard? How has he got a severe advantage? Is he running in the open? Is he running into cover? What is he doing? How does he have a severe advantage? You're still at the advantage, because if you were shooting at him and he runs, you still have his shield down. He's got a long time before he's got his fucking shield back. I mean, I don't see how. And then you're playing at it as a one-player gamer again, aren't you here? Because you're talking as if you're playing Rumble Pit all the time. If you running with sprint, who's to say you aren't going to run into some guy with a shotgun? Okay, sprinting is like the clumsiest thing you can do in Halo. You start running and then you'll find yourself you've ran into somebody else. That's what happens. Okay, if you play smart, then you'll have your teammates in and around the map so that you can fucking cut people off. You know, you'll play map control, you'll play for the weapons, you'll play for this, that and the other. So after a few games, you start to realize the sort of patterns that people are going to be doing to try and escape, and then you work out where they're going to be running, and you're there before they are, and you're just there, bang, shotgun, dead. Do you know what I mean? So this idea that this affects the gameplay massively is crazy, because what situation is this where we've got a guy running away? You know, what situation is this? You can make 100 scenarios up for what this guy does, but it's not going to fucking affect the game, is it? Okay, how are you at a severe advantage? You haven't given an example of how you're at a severe advantage. How? Where's he running to? And what's the difference between that and, say, oh, he jetpacks up onto a ledge out of the way, or he goes into armor lock, or he shoots a hologram towards you so you can't fire at him, or he goes into a bubble shield? These are all weapons in the game that you could use. Why is sprint so different? Why is sprint such an important fucking one? Why is sprint the main problem? These are all fucking abilities in the game, so what's it got to do with sprint? You're just nailing sprint for no reason. How is it sprint's problem? You tore Reach out there like it's a perfect Halo game. It isn't. Its sprint was considered broken. For a lot of people hate it. That's why it keeps changing, because they keep trying to make it work. Okay. A lot of people hated it, and this isn't an argument about whether you like it or you hate it. This is exactly what I'm trying to tell you. You just hate it. That's got nothing to do with how the fucking mechanic works within the game. This is exactly what I'm trying to tell you. You just keep hating on it because you hate it. It's got nothing to do with fucking anything. It really doesn't. It really doesn't. Please explain to me how you hating it and other people hating it is a reason for why the game revolves around it. You can't, because there's no fucking proof for that. It's just your weird opinion that you've got that somehow 343 takes sprint and they decide, hey, our game must have sprint and everything in the game will revolve around sprint. I don't think that board meeting ever happened with 343. I think what happened was they just went, okay, what's everybody else doing? Destiny's doing superpowers. Let's add them in. Call of Duty, everyone loves Call of Duty. ADS, everybody loves a bit of ADS. This is what they did. Nobody sat down and said, right, sprint is going to be our #1 priority for this game. Never happened. And prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. Find that fucking meeting. Even if 343 come out and said it, I wouldn't believe them, because they're 343 and they don't know anything about game design. So how, they don't have a fucking clue. They really don't have a fucking clue. So that's that, isn't it? I'll throw some more things in. When running away is easier, it makes killing players harder. In Reach, running away was very prevalent, so in future installments they adjusted the time to kill. Everything has changed for this mechanic. So you're telling me they increased the time to kill because people were running away, okay? Then why did they make sprint infinite then? Just back up, just realise what you've just said, okay? Running away is the problem, right? According to you, running away is a massive problem. So why would they make the sprint infinite? Because they don't know what they're doing. You can't fucking sit there and say, hey, 343 did this for this reason, because the fact remains that 343 don't have a fucking clue, okay? You look at Bungie, you look at a decent developer who knows what they're fucking doing. That's why Reach is a good game, but you can't accept that because you hate sprints. At the end of the day, it's a 10-second burst of speed. That's what it is. Halo 5, infinite sprint. But they increased the time to kill to stop people running away. Then why would they increase the sprint from 10 seconds to infinite? Okay? That doesn't make sense. If you're trying to stop people from using sprint to escape, supposedly, then why would you do that by giving them infinite sprint? It makes no sense. So what you're trying to say is they adjusted time to kill because of sprint, which is absolute nonsense. They adjusted time to kill because they wanted to make the game more like Call of Duty, to draw in Call of Duty audience. That's why they did it, because that's what they've been trying to do since Halo 4. That's why they put perks in and stuff. Okay, that's why they did fucking kill cams and whatever. This is why this stuff comes about. It's because they're trying to make the game like Call of Duty, not because they're adjusting it because of sprint, because that might actually make some fucking sense. And you can't give 343 credit for shit like that, man. You can't. They don't have a clue. They really don't. And you will tell me that's Halo 5's fault. It didn't need to change. But Reach was hardly the perfect Halo game. Well, no Halo game is perfect. We'll look at Halo 1. The spawns are absolutely horrendous. Unless you go on a website and learn all the spawn locations, you're going to get fucked over by fucking decent people who know where the spawns are. Okay? You play Halo 2. Didn't that game have shed loads of glitches? Super bounces? Didn't it have fucking BXRs and RRX fucking glitches for the BR? Didn't it? The game was hardly perfect, man. The game was hardly perfect. Was Halo 3 perfect? No. Power drainers? Who the fuck thought they were a good idea? Oh, there's 4 guys in the base. I'll throw this big blue orb of death in there and kill them all. That's real balance for you there. No, it wasn't fucking balanced. The game had fucking problems. They changed the spawn on the Warthogs over time. Like on Halo fucking 2, you could park the other team's Warthog behind the base and it would never disappear or respawn. Okay? And then you get further and further we've gone. They changed that so you leave it there for X amount of seconds, it disappears and respawns at the other base. You know, all these games have little changes that can wind up players who've been playing for a significant amount of time if you let it, because they've all got little different things in that are really fucking annoying at times. They really are. So yeah, it's not a perfect game. Nothing's a perfect game though. Like, no Halo game has ever been perfect. You want to make a perfect Halo game, you gotta go on the game yourself and literally make a custom game and turn off the shit that you don't like. The same way I play fucking Smash Brothers. Okay, do I play with Smash Balls on? No, because that shit's fucking stupid. Not a lot of, but I still like items. I'm still into like lightsabers and baseball bats and, you know, fire flowers and stuff because it's fun. But I don't sit there and be like, you know what, I want this all-powerful tank to just drop in and kill everybody with one hit, because that's lame. So the only way a game could ever be perfect is if every single thing in the game didn't piss you off. So that's like no game, because like I say, glitches in Halo 2, power drainer, regens, jetpacks in Reach. Again, these are all things that annoy me, but they don't make me think, oh, the game's terrible because it has sprint and jetpacks, you know. Or I hate Halo 3 because of power drainers and regen fields then. By that logic, that's what you're saying. That is what you are saying. It makes no sense. Its sprint was not the perfect method. It changed gameplay too. It forces you to put your gun down and makes you running away easier. Again, this business of running away easier. How are you running away easier? You've given examples of this in the past, but you haven't got a reason for this. You're both still the same speed. You are. You're both the same speed. And it makes you 10 seconds faster. It's barely anything. It barely changes the game. You even said that in one of your videos. You said sprint was an illusion, and I corrected you by saying sprint is an illusion, it makes you X amount faster. Now you've completely done a complete U-turn and are now saying sprint is all powerful. You said it didn't make any fucking difference a few fucking months ago. Okay? And I corrected you by saying, well, actually it makes you X amount faster. But that's still not a shitload faster. That was my point of my fucking video that I made when I did all those fucking bullshit times when I walked across fucking Valhalla and Blood Gulch for several hours for no fucking reason, wasting my life. Because I wanted to see how fast you actually were game to game to see if it made any fucking difference. And what I found was it doesn't make a great deal of difference. Sprint doesn't make that much of a difference. I found out that in Halo 4, your ordinary movement speed is faster than in other games. So you've already got that on top. No one ever discusses these things. It's all sprint, sprint, sprint. No one ever discusses anything other than sprint. That's my argument. If you're going to come at me with sprint, 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 at least come at me with some other points. Not just sprint, sprint, sprint killed Halo. Because how can just sprint have killed Halo when we've got all this other stuff to discuss? We're just talking about sprint. We're scapegoating sprint. It's like LNG with Brian Reed. Oh, Brian Reed fucked Halo 5 up. Really? Because there was a lot more people working on the story. There was a lot more people working on the fucking game, but apparently it's Brian Reed's fault. You're doing the same thing with sprint. You think sprint is the whole fucking problem of Halo. That makes absolutely no sense. Never in a million years. It allows you to make jumps you can't make at base speed. Yeah, and? How many of them is there? I mean, like say, if you take Halo 4 for example, I think there's about 2 or 3 on the pit. No, I think there's 2, isn't there? Okay, if you count both sides of the level, there's 4. Off the top of my head, there's like 4 you can do. If you count both sides of the level, bear in mind the level is symmetrical. And they have little effect on the gameplay. So, that's off the top of my head. There may be more, because like I didn't hardly play Halo 4, so. But again, I'm thinking of Reach here, and I can't think of hardly any fucking jumps that you could do with sprint, really. Realistically, I mean, there is some, don't get me wrong, there is some, but not that many. Not that many. Because you couldn't be stunned by sprinting, it did cause huge double melee problem. How? How? Once again, you come at me sprinting like a dumbass right towards me. What am I going to do? Okay? 1. Shoot you with a plasma pistol, donk you on the head. 2. Sword you in the face. 3. Shotgun you. 4. Stick you with a plasma grenade. Okay? After all them options, I can still punch you. Guaranteed. There is some fucking double melees that went on in Reach. Some. But once again, Reach is one of the easiest games to get headshots on after punching somebody, because you punch and then your gun is more or less back in your hand almost like faster than most of the games, and you can be quick shot, bang, headshot way faster than you can even double melee. I think you can melee and shoot and Reach faster than you can double melee. I honestly think you can, because that's how I got a lot of fucking kills when people came running at me. Punch, headshot with a DMR. No word of a lie. Okay? You know, it's one of them things, isn't it? You can sit there and say there was a load of double melees, but there wasn't really, was there? Because there's a shitload of weapons that can counter a fucking guy sprinting up to you. You aren't always going to have a DMR in your hand at every fucking encounter you have with someone sprinting at you. You aren't. You've got shed loads of options. If he's running from a distance away, you can get a grenade in between you and him, and he's going to run into that grenade. Or he's going to slow down and back up because he sees the grenade, and then he backs away, and then you shoot him anyway. I mean, there's loads of fucking things you can do. So to say this double melee problem was a huge epidemic, I think is a bit of a fucking stretch. I don't think it's any more of a fucking number. I mean, if there's absolutely no numbers for double melees, they don't exist, so you can assert that there was a shitload of double melees, and I can assert that there wasn't, and we're never going to get anywhere. But you assert it as fact, okay? Okay, I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying. If two people sprint at each other, you get a double melee. But what if you sprint at me and I've got armor lock? Okay? You sprint at me, armor lock, bang, you can't hit me. That's way more overpowered, surely. There's all kinds of fucking things in Reach, all kinds of abilities. What if you run at me and I jetpack above you and shoot you in the head? It's like a game of rock, paper, scissors, man. There's all kinds of different fucking weapons and shit in Reach, some of which are overpowered, and some of which shouldn't be in the game, possibly. But if we're going to sit here and debate sprint, and just sprint, I think that's ridiculous. I think that's absolutely ridiculous, because sprint is only fucking one fucking ability in the fucking game. Seriously. And then we move on to Halo 4, and again, you've got shit like jetpacks and whatever, which you can avoid sprint with, and shit like that. So again, there's many ways around this double melee. Okay? I played Reach a lot. I don't know how much Reach you played. I haven't fucking looked on your account to see how many fucking games of Reach you played. But if you look at my fucking account, I have played fucking, I don't know, 6,000, 7,000 games or something stupid on Reach. And I'm telling you now, double melees were never a fucking issue when I was playing the game. Never. They weren't. They happened, yeah, sometimes. Because sometimes you will get in a fucking melee battle to the death. Sometimes that happens. But most of the time, it doesn't. It really doesn't. What if I'm fighting with you and my buddy stood over on the right and I punch you and he shoots you in the head? Another fucking scenario. I can give you a million scenarios. You keep giving scenarios about in your videos about how people are into double melees. This is always happening. This is this. This is this. This is this. These are all just scenarios from games you fucking played. I can give you a million scenarios from games I've played that are completely fucking different to what you're saying. So I don't see how that you can assert that as fact, because it isn't. It's just not. It never will be. And just because you say it doesn't make it true. Again, just because you say it doesn't make it true either. Do you see how that works? Do you see how that works? You have no evidence to back that up. I can't back up a double melee thing. How? That I would have to I tell you what, go and watch my 2 Halo Reach montages and find me one video clip, okay, where I do a double melee with somebody. Because that's like fucking, I don't know, 2 hours of footage there. So there must be one in there somewhere. There must be one. If they're so common. If they're so common, there must be shitloads of them in there. And don't tell me I cut them all out, because I made those videos years ago. So why would I have cut them out on purpose? You go in there and try and find me one. I can't think right now that maybe there is one in there. Maybe there's a lot of them in there. Prove me wrong. I cannot think of a single kill that was a double melee. Really. I think I can remember one where I'm trying to double melee somebody and they're in armor lock, but that really isn't the same thing, is it? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about double melees, people running up to people and punching them and then punching them again, and people punching each other and ended up in double knockouts and blah 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 blah. I can't think of a single clip in any of my videos or any games where that was like a massive problem. I can't think of that. I can't. Maybe this is just the experience you have with the game because of the way your play style is and whatever, and so when people run at you, you are fucking using a fucking DMR and then you end up in a double melee and you can't think your way around it. I don't know. The way I see it is if someone runs at me, I'm going to do everything in my power to keep them the fuck away from me. So I'm going to stick them with a grenade, I'm going to fucking shoot them, I'm going to do everything in my power to stop them coming anywhere fucking near me. I'm going to shout for fucking help from my friends, okay? I'm going to say, shit, the guy's running straight fucking at me. I need fucking backup. And I'm going to back away in the door and my buddy's going to come in and hit him in the back. I'll do it. It's a game. It's a team-based game. There's loads and loads. And I can say all that. I probably wasted hours now talking about fucking scenarios, but that's all you do in your videos. You talk scenarios. You give scenarios. That's why it sounds so convincing. You give scenarios. But I can give scenarios the other way. Shitloads of them. But you can't argue them because they're just a scenario. You give loads of scenarios and then you assert them as the truth. I'm not asserting anything. I'm just telling you you're wrong. I think you're wrong. Nobody can prove whether you're right or I'm right because at the end of the day we're just talking about things that happened in a game. Okay? So I'm giving you my opinion. Realistically. Because my research into it wasn't even that fucking conclusive. So I can't really say anything. But what I can say is, you can't say that sprint and infinite sprint are the same fucking thing. That's ridiculous. This is crazy. Reach's double melee was the worst in the series. Again, in Halo 3 is where they introduced this concept of where you could beat somebody down and you get like a double knockout. Okay? That was terrible. But Reach has apparently got the worst double melee in the series. For what? What's the difference between Reach and Halo 4? Now you've dropped your foot. You've put your foot in it now. You've put your foot in it now because how is Halo Reach and its sprint any different to Halo 4 or Halo 5? And bear in mind, Halo 5 has Spartan Charge. Okay, so Spartan Charge can one-hit kill you. You don't even need to double melee. It's a one-hit kill. So how the hell is Reach the worst double melee? That's a stupid argument because in Halo 5 you don't even need to double melee. So of course Reach has got a bad double melee compared to Halo 5 because in Halo 5 it's a one-hit kill. You just dropped yourself right in it there, didn't you? Had no stun if you left just run through bullets. Okay, from a guy that played Gears of War 1 and then played Gears of War 2, that's exactly how sprint has to work for it to even work. If you've got a sprint where bullets slow you down, it completely destroys the entire fucking point of the sprint. There'd be no point in having it. So, it's like I said in my other video, if you're going to have a sprint ability, you have to have it be a sprint ability where you can run through bullets. If you have it where as bullets slow you down and shit, basically no point in being there. No point in being there, which is exactly what you want anyway. So I don't know why you would want an ability where you could slow people down when bullets hit them, because that's not really what you want anyway. You want it gone for good, which is your opinion. But again, if you're going to have it, there's no point in having it where bullets slow you down, because you end up with Gears of War 2 or Gears of War 3 where bullets fucking slow you down, and it pisses you the fuck right off when you're playing the game. It really does. It makes no sense. You get caught in the leg with a bullet from like halfway across the map and you start fucking moving slow and then you're just dead. It makes no sense. You're going to have a sprinty game like Gears of War 2 or 3 and then you force people to not be able to use the fucking abilities and use the fucking sprint. If you're gonna have a sprint, you've got to make it easy to fucking use and not punish people for using it. Okay, the punishment is when you fucking get to somebody and they pull out a fucking sword or a fucking plasma grenade and fucking kill you. What's this business of bullets slowing you down? Well, what's the point in having it then? No one would fucking use it because it'd just be a fucking hindrance. It'd be like having jetpack, but you have to like refuel it every time you use it. That's the equivalent, you know? It'd be stupid. It would make sense. Right, run through bullets and punch somebody. Yeah. Again, asserting a fucking point of view. Again, asserting a scenario. That's all you do. Somebody runs through bullets and punches somebody. Yeah, or they could pull out a shotgun. Or they could donk them on the head when they get to them. After the bullets have already damaged them. Which they still do, by the way. Well, the bullets still do fucking damage. Are we forgotten about this? The bullets still do fucking damage, okay? So he's going to be losing health on his way to the guy. And how far away is he sprinting from? You're just asserting this again. Where's he sprinting from? One. Okay, so if he's sprinting from one end of fucking Blood Gulch to the other, I think I've got a good chance of fucking killing him before he reaches me, okay? If he's sprinting from the sword on fucking Countdown and I'm in the doorway on the other side, okay, that's a distance. You've given me a distance, okay? Now, I still think that by the time he reaches me from that sword, his shield's going to be down and I'm going to be able to donk him with one hit. That's what I think. Okay, and that's one of the smallest maps in the game. Now you tell me, what kind of distance are we talking about? Have you just got this thing where you've got horse blinders on looking at somebody and all of a sudden somebody's on you and you're already hitting you? That's just you being fucking blind. Okay? That's nothing to do with anything. You just fucking don't like the mechanic. You don't like the sprints. What is this business of fucking people running through bullets? What are you saying? What are you saying when you say people running through bullets? Yeah, so it's like I said, you like to assert your point of view, but that's all you do, assert your point of view, and you give me scenarios, whereas I can give you another scenario of something else happening, and then you can't argue that either, because it's another scenario from the exact same game that is a plausible scenario. And because of Reach's ass backwards melee system, you never seem to bring up, it doesn't matter how many times the guy's shooting you, blah blah blah. You know about shield bleed through now again. You know what shield. So again, I can have that guy's shield down from the Countdown sword to the fucking silo door. So what is the distance you're talking about this guy running from? He's gonna have to be running from close as fuck anyway to survive DMR shots to the fucking face. How long does it take to fire 5 DMR shots? Why don't you do some research into this? Why don't you do some actual research as to how many fucking shots you've got to put into somebody when they're running at you and how fucking far away they have to fucking be before their fucking shield goes off? That's what I would do if I wanted to prove that fucking sprint was the problem. That's what I would do. That's what I would do. But I don't, because I don't think it is the problem, and I think that the research would actually show that it's not a fucking problem. Okay? If I'm at the silo door and he's at the sword, he ain't getting nowhere near me. He isn't. Okay? He's gonna get shot, he may get grenaded, he may, you know, there's all kinds of things you can do to him before he even gets anywhere near you. Okay? If you're just sat there, and there's a guy running at you, okay, what are you doing? Missing shots? Okay? Even if you miss every single shot, you can still hit him with a grenade, and he still loses his shield on his way to you. Still. He still loses his shield with one grenade. And so, I don't get it. I really don't get where you're coming from with this. Oh, melee system in Reach was so stupid. Whatever, man. Whatever. Again, it doesn't make any difference. It really doesn't. It just simplified the game. That's what that melee system did. It just simplified it because you knew when somebody was one shot. You knew because it was so fucking clear. You knew that you were one shot. If you punched somebody once, they were one shot. There wasn't any of that shield bleed through shit. You couldn't shoot somebody twice with a fucking assault rifle and punch them like you can in Halo 3 and 4. Okay? That's how I like the gameplay. You may disagree with me, and you're entitled to disagree with me. You're entitled to prefer the other style of gameplay, but that's got nothing to do with sprint. Again, it does nothing. It doesn't, because you can get enough shots on him before he reaches you. What is the distance we're talking here? Give me a distance. You haven't given me a distance. Okay? I can assert a distance, and I can say there's no way he's going to hit me, and you'll say, come back and say, oh, from that distance, I was talking about from this distance. What distance are you talking about? Really? Really? And what weapons are we talking about? Are we talking about grenades? Are we talking about DMRs? Are we talking about pistols? Are we talking about rocket launchers? Are we talking about swords? What are we talking about? There's so many weapons in the game that you fail to fucking discuss. It seems like you're talking about the DMR and one generic guy who's running at you. That is like the bog standard fucking scenario from like a fucking custom game or a fucking rumble pit game. What the fuck happens when you've got teammates with you? What the fuck happens when you're fucking holding positions, when you're like holding the top floor of an area and some guy runs in? Well, he's going to get levered by my teammate over there before he even gets to me. Okay? It's a strategic game. It's about fucking map control. It's about controlling weapons, knowing when the weapons spawn. It's about holding areas. Okay? And I think it's ironic that you would be one of the people to say, you never bring up Reach's melee system, when you never bring up anything. You just talk about sprint. You don't talk about infinite sprint. You don't talk about perks of sprint. You don't talk about jetpacks. You don't talk about armor lock. You don't talk about power drainers. You don't talk about thrust. You don't talk about ground pound. You don't talk about Spartan charge. It's just sprint. Everything is sprint with you. That's all I hear. Sprint. Change the name of your channel. You shouldn't be Favyn. You should just be Sprint, because that's literally all you complain about. You're telling me that everything, whether it be thrusters, jetpacks, fucking ground pound, you name it, is all revolving around sprint. Spartan charge I'll give you, because that does fucking, you can't use it without sprint. But maybe you could if they fucking programmed it a different way, but that's another story. But you're telling me that everything revolves around sprint. You've got no evidence to back that up. Nothing. Doesn't matter how many times a guy shooting this sprinter because they melee each other at the same time, they both go the same health. Unless the shooter manages to pop the shield in time. Exactly. So what distance are you talking about? This is what I'm saying. What about grenades? What about swords? What about shotguns? What about fucking rockets? What about fucking someone punched him in the back when you're fighting with him? Damn, man. It's a lot harder to do when the other guy sprints at you with no fuck given. Really isn't, man. If you really isn't. What I mean, it's really hard to do. It's a lot harder to shoot somebody. It's a load of bollocks. It isn't. It isn't any harder to shoot somebody when they're running at you with a bit of a sprint on. And for what distance? You can light sprint, you can think it's good, and the changes that come with it, but to ignore the change and act like it doesn't do anything but make you faster. Well, that's exactly what's... That's ridiculous. To ignore the change and act like it doesn't do anything but make you faster, ridiculous. What else does sprint fucking do? It doesn't do anything else. It doesn't. It makes you faster. That's the mechanic. That's the whole fucking point. That is the whole fucking point of it, is to give you a burst of speed. Okay, here's a scenario for you that never gets mentioned. What if I'm behind somebody, right? And I'm just about 3 foot away from him. You know, couple of meters, 3 foot, whatever you want to call it. Right? I'm looking at this guy's fucking back, and he's walking in the opposite direction. He's not sprinting, he's just walking in the opposite direction. Okay? In Halo 1, Halo 2, Halo 3, Halo Anniversary, I can't catch him. I can't. Because he's walking at the same speed as me. Until he stops, I can't get him. Yeah, I can shoot at him, but then he may turn around. He might have a rocket launcher. He might have a sword, whatever. Okay? I'm behind him. I'm behind him. Okay? And what your natural instinct would be to try and get him before he turns around. Now, you can talk about radars, you can talk about sprint, and again, this is what I'm talking about with scenarios, because Favyn will come up with a million scenarios. I'm coming up with one here. If I can sprint, I can get him. If I'm quick, I can get him, and if he's a rocket launcher, he's going to turn around, he's going to blow himself up, right? But in any other game, he notices me on that radar, he turns around, I am done, right? That's what Halo Reach does. That's what Sprint does. It gives you an opportunity, bearing in mind, if somebody is like aiming or, you know, just kind of like strolling around trying to like say you're looking, you might be looking across the map, aiming at somebody and strafing along, you know, I can come up behind him with Sprint and get him. If I haven't got the Sprint, then you can't get him. That's what it does. That's all it does. It gives you that little fucking bit of boost of speed. And that's it. All it does is give you a slight boost of speed. Anything else is cooked up in the minds of the community and the minds of Favyn and Ready Up Live to try and fucking convince everybody that Sprint is the fucking problem that is finished Halo off, and that somehow Bungie are the ones that fucked up Halo, even though we all know that Reach wasn't a bad game. It had the fucking triangle, which I mentioned at the fucking beginning. It had fucking decent game modes. It had decent fucking graphics, decent aesthetics. It had good music, a halfway decent campaign. It had Forge mode at launch. It was a good game. Okay? And yeah, you can say, oh, Sprint sucked, oh, Jetpack sucked, oh, this sucked, but you can say that about any game. You can say, well, Halo 2, but the SMG sucked, or Halo 3, the power drainer sucked, and we can do that all fucking night, but it doesn't fucking change the core fucking gameplay. It doesn't affect the core gameplay. Melee, grenade, and fucking weapons. It doesn't, because you can still shoot somebody who's sprinting. You can still grenade somebody who's sprinting. You can still melee someone who's sprinting. Okay? You can't melee somebody who's jetpacking. Can you? Think about it. If you're jetpacking, you ain't going to be meleeing nobody, because you're up in the air. And nobody down the floor is going to be meleeing you, because you're up in the air. You can still shoot them. You're not going to be grenading them either, because they're going to be up in the air. You can stick them, but you can't grenade them. Do you see? So the jetpack is more broken than the Sprint ever was. Yet nobody ever discusses the jetpack. Nobody talks about the jetpack. What about the armor lock? Okay? Guy goes into armor lock. Can't grenade him. Can't melee him. Can't shoot him. The three fucking things on the triangle that weapons grades just talked about. Yet nobody ever blames the armor lock. You see, it's all bollocks. Anybody that sits there and says Sprint is the main problem, the whole game revolves around it, is completely deluded. Completely deluded. Because again, 343 don't know what the fuck they are doing. They don't. They don't have a clue. Okay? They don't build maps around Sprint. They just take bits from other games. That's what they do. That's the way I see it. Okay? That's why we have ground power and spawn charge, because they were taken out of Destiny. That's what happened. Okay? When people said they didn't like armor abilities, they took that and said, we'll just make the armor abilities part of the game. No. What people meant was they don't want any retarded shit in like armor lock and jetpacks. That's what they meant. That's what they meant. They didn't mean they didn't want armor ability. They meant they don't want fucking bollocks in the game. That's what they meant. So 343 clearly doesn't have a clue. Feel free to subscribe, guys. See you later.